Hello, my name is Tony. Best-selling author Wilbur Smith signed a deal with producer Michael Klinger to turn several of his action-adventure novels into films. Klinger bought the rights to Goldmine, Shout at the Devil, The Sunbird, Eye of the Tiger, and Eagle in the Sky. When I was a kid, I enjoyed Smith's novels a great deal. They were fast-paced, violent, exotic, action-packed, and pumped with enough racy sex and sadism to satisfy any red-blooded, hormonally charged teenage soul. Come to think of it, not much has changed. His super brutal and mega macho novel, The Dark of the Sun, aka The Mercenaries, was and remains a firm favourite of mine, and so is the film adaptation starring Rod Taylor and Jim Brown. If you're gonna finance action-adventure flicks, Wilbur Smith is a damn fine investment, at least I thought so. But like, what the fuck did I know? Klinger got around to making Goldmine as Gold in 1974, reviewed on the channel somewhere. Roger Moore, fresh from his successful James Bond debut in Live and Let Die, took the leading role. The film was a big enough hit to galvanise Klinger into the pursuit of making another. In 1976, with a bigger budget, more ambitious concept, same director as Gold, Peter Hunt, and with Moore starring again, this time billed alongside well-refreshed Hollywood hardman Lee Marvin, Shout at the Devil was made and unleashed upon an unsuspecting world. It was a modest hit in the UK, taking 15 million quid at the box office and sparking the #1 spot. It cost 9 million to make. What the global take is, I don't know, and I can't find any information, not that I've looked all that hard, but my assumption would be that it at least turned a profit. Or maybe it didn't, because Klinger never made any more films of Wilbur Smith books, and their relationship rapidly soured and ended in litigation. Which is a shame, because Shout at the Devil is a whole continent load of jokey, hokey fun and frivolity, with some serious unpleasant darker moments creeping in midway, and a shitload of highly adventurous hijinks to crowd please the audience. Critic Roger Ebert extended the stepladder to his high horse that day when he saw fit to deem it a big, dumb, silly movie that's impossible to dislike. The kind of movie they used to make back when audiences were supposed to have the mentality of a 12-year-old. Wow, that's not insulting or condescending at all, is it? Well, would it scar you for life if I told you I don't fully agree? It would? Great. Then I don't fully agree. It is possible to dislike it, and we'll get into that later, and I don't think it's so dumb as to underestimate its audience or generalize them as having the mentality of 12-year-olds. I do think it appeals to the desire within us to be entertained by something that is unpretentious and combines the classic notions of high adventure and escapism enshrined in films like The African Queen and The Guns of Navarone. If you want to take a vacation for 2.5 hours in an alternate world set in the past, Shout at the Devil will happily oblige. Just surrender to it. It's 1913 and Sebastian Oldsmith Roger Moore, a footloose upper-class Englishman, travels to Zanzibar on his way to Australia where he hopes to make his fortune in sheep farming. He catches the eye of Flynn O'Flynn, Lee Marvin, an alcoholic Irish-American ivory poacher and conman who gives himself the bogus military rank of colonel. Flynn, for reasons unknown, needs a dupe, preferably English, to front an ivory poaching expedition into German-controlled East Africa. Flynn's right-hand man and comedy foil, Mohammed, played by Ian Holm in blackface, oh dearie dearie me, robs Oldsmith of all his cash, and when he can't pay his hotel bill, our shameless rogue steps in and lends him the money from his own stolen purse. Heading upriver on Flynn's rickety sailboat with Oldsmith vomiting most of the way from recurrent motion sickness whilst Flynn downs innumerable bottles of gin, they land and shoot a load of elephants. With the ivory safely on the tub, Flynn stays behind whilst Oldsmith disembarks to accompany their plunder back to Zanzibar and then return to pick up some more. During Oldsmith's absence, Flynn and his men are attacked by the forces of the local German military commander Fleischer, René Koldoff. Oldsmith arrives in time to save a fleeing and wounded Flynn from being eaten by a fucking huge alligator. One of the biggest fucking huge alligators I've ever seen. As they try to escape on Flynn's boat, Fleischer gives chase on a paddle steamer. Although they make it to the open sea, their vessel is rammed by German battleship the Blucher, which Fleischer has boarded. Now they're shipwrecked in Portuguese territory and... you're getting the picture, right? It's an eventful chain of events in a long chain, which leads to Oldsmith contracting malaria and being taken to Flynn's impressive home in the African bush. There he is nursed back to health by Flynn's daughter, Rosa Barbara Parkins. The two fall in love, have a shag, she falls pregnant, they get married, child is born.
What the hell do you think you're doing? He's deformed. He's a girl.
Flynn, in revenge against Fleischer for sinking his boat and causing the loss of his ivory, dispatches Old Smith to collect taxes from the local native villages, disguised as a German official, as the extortion is usually a German territorial preserve. In a skirmish with Fleischer and his men, they make off with all the loot Fleischer has collected. On another ivory poaching expedition, Flynn and Old Smith run across Fleischer and his troops out on manoeuvres. They take this opportunity to raid Fleischer's base. It is here they discover a message from the German military high command. It informs that war has now been declared and Fleischer has been granted carte blanche to visit whatever measures on whoever he pleases to suppress resistance and advance the Kaiser's cause. They realise too late that he's headed to Flynn's homestead. When they get back there, they find the place burned to the ground, the locals and servants butchered, and Old Smith and Rosa's baby daughter has been murdered on Fleischer's command. This is the turning point when the film largely dispenses with the light and semi-comedic devil-may-care tone prevalent in the first 90 minutes and heads into darker, more serious territory for the second. It doesn't get much darker and more serious than the deliberate murder of an infant child. Flynn, Old Smith and Rosa wage their own personal war against Fleischer and the German forces. They disrupt the delivery of a cargo of steel plate. They deduce that it was being transported overland to repair the Blucher, which was originally thought to have been sunk in a battle with Allied warships. British naval intelligence engages Flynn with the promise of a cash reward and, more importantly, some cases of London dry gin to locate the Blucher and plant a bomb on it and sink it. Finding the Blucher involves aerial reconnaissance in a Portuguese biplane. Flynn happily volunteers Old Smith, or Bassie as he's taken to calling him, his truncation of Sebastian, to act as a spotter. They locate the Blucher moored in a wide river, but the crew open fire and the pilot is mortally wounded. The plane is severely damaged. Barely making it back to the rudimentary runway on a coastal beach, the plane crashes, throwing Old Smith clear, smashing him face first into some rocks. That'll bring the tears to your eyes, and incinerating the pilot. Seeing how Fleischer is aboard the Blucher, Flynn, Old Smith and Rosa glimpse an opportunity to sink the ship and kill their sworn enemy. Disguised as a native worker, one of many seconded to help repair the craft, Old Smith gets on board and plants a timed explosive device in the armory. However, when he and Flynn get back to camp, they find all their men dead. Rosa is missing. Fleischer has abducted her and taken her back to the Blucher. With time running out before the balloon goes up, Flynn and Old Smith must swim out to the Blucher, rescue Rosa, getting clear before all hell lets loose. How will they do it? Will they do it? And will the appalling Fleischer pay with his life? Well, what do you reckon? Shout at the Devil is another testament to that old adage, they don't make 'em like that anymore, primarily because it's true. It's a big, brash, loud and incident-packed boys' own action-adventure aiming for that sense of the epic but falling just a little bit short. Structurally, it's a bit of a sprawl, but when it comes to grabbing the attention of the audience and holding it for the duration, director Peter Hunt ensures it's always well-paced and magnetically watchable. The widescreen cinematography by Michael Reed, director of photography for Honor Majesty Secret Service, which Hunt also directed, is quite magnificent, making the most of the Maltese and South African locations. Great to look at with an authentic period feel. The ever-dependable Maurice Jarre delivers another lush and rousing soundtrack that stands up favourably against his extensive body of work. We're still in the days of real-life stunts and pyrotechnics executed by real people. Special effects and model work by Derek Meddins does just enough to maintain a veneer of believability, despite some seriously ropey back projection work during the aerial sequences, but thankfully they're brief. The script, in which Wilbur Smith had a hand, is serviceable and provides a decent and nimble framework for the action set pieces. Then there's the highly attractive cast. Moore makes a very capable if naive romantic hero, and his chemistry with joint headliner Lee Marvin results in a somewhat unlikely screen pairing working out remarkably well. They bounce off each other with a combination of comedy and pathos, and it's the integration of their polar opposite acting styles that makes their double act quite close to unique. This is not the ice-cool, flint-sharp, lethally disposed Lee Marvin of Point Blank and Prime Cut, but the unrestrained, hammy, eye-rolling, larger-than-life Lee Marvin of Cat Ballou and Paint Your Wagon. He seems to be enjoying himself tremendously as a gin-swigging mercenary rogue of booming, exaggerated pantomime dimensions. Once you acclimatise to it, he's a fucking riot. And when did Lee Marvin ever give a performance that was dull to watch? Barbara Parkins hits on the right combination of misty-eyed feminine beauty, emotion and steely backbone, treating her wayward father as the unruly, irresponsible man-child he is. Her relationship with Moore's character is believably defined, and she injects the right notes of poignancy, grief and a parent's thirst for revenge after the death of her baby daughter. Actually, and maybe surprisingly, the reactions of all three central characters to this tragic event are handled with some sensitivity. Fleetingly, I grant you, but enough to salvage it from a glib sense of, right, so the kid's dead, let's move on. In fact, when she coldly and repeatedly shoots a captured German soldier who arrogantly sneers and leers at her, it classifies clearly what her grief has reduced her to and how it has changed her. The effect on her relationship with Moore's character, the shift in dynamic from starstruck lovers to grieving parents, is also handled with at least some insight and compassion. The first half of the movie is episodic, our heroes getting into one scrape or another, engaging in a John Ford-like protracted comedy fistfight, raucous, rough and tumble stuff. The second half focuses on the darker, more serious elements, grief reactions, the pursuit of revenge, and the explosive and suspenseful mission to destroy the battleship and end Fleischer. Talking of Fleischer, he starts out as a figure of fun, an overweight, bumbling, bombastic, Germanic military caricature. Then, once granted more power and leeway, soon reveals his truer essence as an evil, butchering, child-murdering monster. Par for the course for a political, cultural mindset and philosophy that would later give us Hitler, World War II and the Holocaust. Yeah, thanks for all that, guys.
What do we have for entertainment?
Is it impossible to dislike as Ebert did Creed? No, of course it's not, for the following reasons. Even when I first saw it, the killing of the elephants for ivory looked very realistic and disturbingly ugly, a morally repugnant and vile activity and trade. Historically, there's no denying that it's what used to happen and back then was considered acceptable and commonplace, but that doesn't make it any easier to watch, and some may find it off-putting, shall we say. The makers must have sensed this, because in both the opening and closing credits they feel the need to post this disclaimer. The shift in tone halfway through might be a jarring disparity and indeed shocking for some. It's all been amiable knockabout, adventuresome fun and frolic. Then they go kill a baby and butcher a load of innocents. Personally, I'm fine with it. Not with baby killing and butchery of innocents as real-world activities, perish those thoughts, but as consequential components of the story being told. The script could have handled the switch-up better, and so could the director, but isn't that always the case? It could always have been handled differently or in ways that we may think preferable, but from a personal perspective, I like how it transitions from lighter to darker territory, and I find the second half of the film to be the most satisfying, the narrative leading to an explosively impressive action-packed finale. Then there's the violence. Shout of the Devil does have a fair old injection of violence and sadism pumping through its veins. Along with the baby killing, they're more adult-orientated themes, not traditionally associated with films targeted exclusively at 12-year-olds. Some 12-year-olds, I grant you, me included when I was that age, but I don't think you can generalise. Plus, I wonder if some of the more hypersensitive, less psychologically resilient 12-year-olds of our modern and feeble age might be irreparably traumatised by it forever. See, it all looks a tad more realistic than the latest superhero CGI fest. Could be a bit of a shock to the system, you know. Finally, in this last episode of Reasons Not to Like It, historical purists may have issues. Like the Portuguese were neutral at the time the film is set, so their government would have been unlikely to loan out a plane and pilot to British naval intelligence, or provide support in any way, to be honest. And, well, there are a lot of things like that, trust me, but I'm not going to go there. Let's just say inaccuracies in this fact-based fiction might plant the irritation bug up the twitching asses of some. Alternatively though, most fans of old-school action-adventure movies will likely have a fucking ball with it. It's a riotous retro blast of a film with some groovy star power and great grisly goings-on. As a fan of both Moore and Marvin, I rate it as essential viewing, and the restored Blu-ray version is a vibrant, crisp and clean affair with a 30-minute longer runtime than the edited US cut. Lovely! On that note, before his death in 2002, director Peter Hunt revealed that 50 minutes had been cut from the original print. Furthermore, the only full copy of that original print was stashed in his garage at home. Whatever became of it, if even true, who can say? But wouldn't it be great if someone got hold of it and restored it to a complete 200-minute roadshow version? I'd take out a second mortgage to buy a copy. Nope, hang on, I mean a third. Thank you again for your time and attention and your continued support. Several suggestions and requests for this pass through my field of vision over time, and never let it be said I am not a man of the people. Just goes to prove I will get around to stuff. Of course, by the time I do, you may be too mentally impaired, otherwise debilitated, or dead to notice or care. But that's hardly my fault, is it? Rest assured, you think it, I'm working on it. Well, possibly.